You're listening to Remotely One, a podcast that educates, entertains, and inspires you to take your life back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a former beer rep who left the warehouse to become a voice actor and digital creator.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds awesome. Let's clock in.
Where did you originally grow up?
On a boat in Puget Sound in Washington State.
Wow.
That's remote working from a boat.
Yar!
That's my first remote working job. We can talk about it.
Yes, you were born on a boat.
I wasn't born on the boat.
Oh, wait, you were actually born in a hospital.
I was born in a hospital.
But the hospital was a boat.
I wasn't born on the boat, but I lived there for 10 years growing up before graduating from high school.
So the first 10 years of your life, you were raised on a boat in Puget Sound.
Up until 18.
8? That's amazing.
Did you believe in mermaids, yes or no?
Yeah, definitely.
Welcome back to Remotely One. I am your co-host, Rick Haney, joined by my esteemed colleague, Kaleem Clarkson. What's going down?
Jazz hands.
Jazz hands. We're all jazzed up for this episode, am I right?
Super jazzed up, guy.
Oh,
Super
this is going to be
jazzed
fun.
up.
This is going to be so much fun.
Your baby blues are still shining through, bro. They're looking good again, man. Looking good again. You're looking good.
Stop. Hey, everybody. Since you know how to find us, do us a huge favor and go to ratethispodcast.com/remotely one and leave us a review. That's it. No big deal. Again, it's ratethispodcast.com/remotely one. If you could do that for us, we would be ever so thankful. Since 2015, Remotely One is one of the largest communities of remote work professionals, with over 3,000 Slack members and 5,000 email subscribers. And if I'm not mistaken, that number is growing. 5! That's awesome. It's free to join, so go check it out at remotelyone.com. And with that out of the way, Kaleem, my brother, give us a teaser too about today's guest.
Bro, like what happens is, we book these guests, and then I'm like, no big deal. We're gonna talk to you, no big deal. And then the day of, I start getting real nervous, Rick, and I sweat through my shirts, buddy.
Perspiry.
Oh my gosh, I'm just like the dude on an airplane over here. So
I want you to turn that perspiration into inspiration. And we're going to do that today.
Yes, I am inspired. Do you know why I'm inspired about today's guest, Rick?
Lay it on me.
Okay. Our guest is originally from the ocean, and they now reside, the ocean. And they now reside in Los Angeles, okay? They have touched land, and they no longer have fins. The water was splashed on her in the middle of the city. And then, she had fins in the middle of the city, but now she found her true love, Rick. So now she can walk on land now and not have to live in the ocean. Unbelievable. It's amazing. Not only that, Rick, our guest did not just stop there. She didn't just learn to walk and come out of the ocean. She knows some shits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
She knows some shits. She got into the Air Force Academy. Okay. Right?
Uh-huh.
Not only that, she has her master's in architecture from just a tiny little school, no big deal, Yale.
Yeah.
That's
big time.
Yep. And she did all that after living on a boat until high school, son.
A boat?
After living on a boat until high school. We're like, where are you from? She goes, I don't know, because I was born on a boat and I lived on a boat. Guest. Now, you weren't technically born on the boat, right, guest?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
But we can tell that story today. We can even make it up.
We're going to go with that.
But you did live on a boat all the way until high school, pretty much.
Yeah, I did with my mom. And it wasn't a houseboat. A lot of people are like, oh, it's, one of those big, like, fancy Seattle, like, Sleepless in Seattle type house, floating house things. No, it was a 34. It was a 34-foot powerboat.
Wow.
So
That's awesome. I don't like small spaces. I don't like small spaces.
No, it was honestly beautiful though, because that was why we ended up on the powerboat, not on a sailboat, because it had these big windows and it was really beautiful. It was antique.
Oh.
Beautiful teak and mahogany wood everywhere. So it was beautiful, but it was a powerboat.
That is unbelievable. But it worked out. It worked out. Rick, the work that she has been done, just take this, just look at a few places. We're just going to name them a few because I can't name them all, Rick, okay?
You can try. I mean, that list is impressive.
Her work has been featured in the New York Times, Time Magazine, Fast Company, Fast Design, TechCrunch, Marty Bine Green, Huffington Post, Vogue Magazine. I'm tired. I'm not.
Do I see Mother Jones on there?
Mother Jones?
That's a really interesting project if you guys want to talk about that one. That was featured in
Oh,
Mother
we
Jones.
do.
Okay.
We do.
Business
Talk about
Insider.
it.
Oh, Glamour Magazine, and of course
Yes.
she got in the alma mater, Yale Retrospecta.
Oh, wow.
Can't even say it. Oh, Rick, our guest is the co-founder and CEO of WellSet, which is the first holistic health platform for teams. Listeners and viewers, please give a warm welcome to Tegan Bukowski. Let's go! Let's go, Tegan! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go!
All right. All right, people, settle down.
Settle
in front.
down, studio audience. Settle
down.
Thank you
They're
all.
so
Thank
loud. They're so
My
loud.
gosh,
Thank you for
Tegan. I
joining
mean,
us.
we can't control these people. All I can say is that they're excited to see you and hear your story.
you. I'm excited to see them.
As are
crowd,
we.
Big crowd.
Yes.
Thank
you for joining us. Yeah, it's really great to have you.
Yeah, great to be here. And actually, as you were listing off which I don't normally hear a list of all the places that the work has been featured all at once, but it made me think about how, I started my career in the nonprofit space, actually doing a lot of different projects, creating a lot of different teams, and they were always remote. I hadn't actually thought about that until this moment, but actually, even that Mother Jones project that we could talk about was a fully remote team internationally, and we were getting a lot done. So anyway, it's great to be here.
Well, Tegan, seeming you just blew off our first question that we had for you. Tell us about your first experience working remotely. Damn it! I don't know. We got to talk about Mother Jones.
All right. I guess the nonprofit experience is probably my most applicable working remotely. Although we were going to talk about working remotely on the boat when I was like 13. We were going to talk about
Listen,
that.
this is your show, Tegan. You can start.
Actually, this is your
You
show.
are now the captain
All
of
right.
the ship.
Setting the stage at the age.
Captain of the ship. Did you hear it? I'm sorry.
Captain of the ship.
You get it because you grew up on a boat. Just playing.
Get it? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yar.
I wasn't the captain though. I mean, that's
Well, you are now.
Seriously now.
Yeah, it's true.
You are now.
Working on the boat back in the day, I taught myself how to code and actually had, in the 90s, my first kind of project was working, literally sitting in the V-berth of the boat, so in the front of the boat, in my little V-berth bed, coding at the age of 12. And I started a website that was teaching mostly girls how to code. This was like before MySpace and Facebook. It was like back in the day.
Wow, that's
way back in the
amazing.
day. That was kind of working remotely. But I think my
Definitely.
first experience working with a team remotely was probably my nonprofit experience. So I started what was essentially kind of an umbrella 501c3 in college.
Okay.
I went to Wash U for undergrad after I left the Air Force Academy. I know you mentioned that I went to the Air Force Academy, and we were talking about this before the show, but I think I chose to go to the Air Force Academy after living on a boat because I had zero structure. I was like a wild child, like running around in my dinghy, pet seals and stuff. And I was like, maybe I should stop being a mermaid and I should go into the military. That was the idea. That was the link in my 16-year-old, 17-year-old brain. I was like, military. And that was a great experience. But it was, at the end of the day, that's a whole story. But I wanted to do something much more creative. Well, it was just, I actually loved the military part, and I am a supporter of the military. I think the military is great, but I am an entrepreneur. I have done a billion different creative projects. I have an architect's brain. It wasn't for me in terms of the education, but anyway, I ended up at Wash U in St. Louis, and they have just such an incredible way of supporting students to start social impact projects. And so I ended up getting a grant from the Gephardt Institute and started this nonprofit. It was called Artist Activists, but honestly, that name was really just an umbrella name. And we ended up doing projects in 9 different countries, ranging from designing East Africa's first utility scale photovoltaic field that powers, I think, at one point, it powered almost 10% of the Rwandan energy grid and powered about 25,000 village homes that didn't have power before. And it financially powers an orphanage of about 650 kids that was started originally after the genocide in Rwanda. And, now it's been a while, so I think most of the kids have graduated from the house but that were affected by that. But it's just that was a great project. But we also did arts therapy with kids that had been affected by warfare, natural disaster, election violence in Kenya, and those projects were in Haiti, and we did one in Rwanda, and we did one in Kenya, we did one in Colombia with kids that had been affected by the guerrilla warfare there, and we had a team that went to Ghana and started a radio school, actually applicable to you guys, and that was really cool because we taught a bunch of teenagers how to run a radio station, and they would teach agricultural best practice over the radio in addition to a bunch of other things.
So you did all this remotely.
It was all remote. They were all
while in college. While in
college. Yeah, and actually, and it was a totally different world then. Obviously, we didn't have things like, easy video conferencing. And so it was a lot of time spent on messaging services. I can't even remember what we were using back then, but it was
AIM,
a lot
you're
of,
probably AIM.
Probably AIM. I don't know. I'm not that old, actually. We're beyond AIM. That was when I was like 14, okay?
You're like, haha. You're like, whoa.
Hang on
Slow down. Slow down. I'm not that old.
I'm insulted. This is a video podcast, I know, but for people who are listening, I'm not. Anyway.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But my most remote working experience that was related to the nonprofit. So I traveled as a result of one of these projects through the nonprofit. I traveled to the west of Rwanda, and I met an orphanage out there that was a different one than the one we were working with, run by a really, really cool guy, Victor Montroy, called L'Espérance. And he was telling me when we were there visiting that they were really struggling to take payments from people in Germany, which is where they had a really big support system. And so I ended up, and this is before there were really easy payment gateways, so now this would be such an easy thing for them to do, but back then technologically it was really hard for them to take payments internationally and from the web. So I built them a payment gateway portal website, and because of that I ended up meeting an astronaut named Ron Guerin, and I actually didn't meet him there. He ended up calling me maybe about 6 months later when I was back in the States, and I picked up the phone and he was like, hello, is this Tegan? And I was like, yes. And he was like, this is astronaut Ron Guerin. And I was like, okay. And so I ended up working on a project with...
This is astronaut Buzz Lightyear.
I know, literally. No, he is literally Buzz Lightyear.
Reach for the sky.
He's the coolest. But he was like, I'm about to go to the space station on the Soyuz rocket in, about 8 months. And I want to do a digital project from space while I'm there. Do you want to help me? And so I ended up actually helping him to build kind of it was a humanitarian mapping project from space using this open source technology called Ushahidi. It was a crisis mapping platform that I'd been using in Kenya. And anyway, we created kind of a blog / mapping project from the space station. So I actually had the space station phone number in my phone for a while. And anyway,
this is crazy. How,
I've never talked to another human being who had the space station phone number in their phone.
That's some remote working.
I don't feel worthy enough for this conversation.
I'm so out of place right now.
Oh my God,
she's just like, yeah, true. Buzz Lightyear was like, yo, you want to do this project with me? And she's like, whatever, I'll code that shit tonight.
Ron is the coolest.
And
yes.
Ron is the coolest, and he still, I think that so it got adopted. The project, it was called Fragile Oasis, got adopted by NASA. And then I can't remember. I don't know I actually don't know what's going. Maybe you guys should have Ron on the show next. But he's doing all sorts of cool stuff.
Put us in touch with Ron.
Yeah, I will. But I remember one day I missed a phone call. This is before I had the phone number for the space station in my phone. I missed a call while I was on a different conference call. My phone was literally sitting, because we were all talking at my phone and, like huddled around this phone. I think it was an international call for some project we were doing. And this number popped up and I was like, I think I need to answer that. And so I missed it. And so I called back and it was the Johnson Space or the Kennedy Space, it was a space, I can't even remember which space center it was. It was like a weird one. It was like not the main one. And I was like, okay, so if the space station called me from this number, this is like, I was talking to the operator. And I was like, if the space station called me from this number, would this be the number that would pop up? And the operator was like, no. And then hung up on me. I'm like, no, I think that actually is what happened. But anyway, so that's it's a fun fact.
I love it.
I did actually. It routes through the space center and operator number and comes to your phone. But so I couldn't call him. But it was great. I got to talk to them. I had to be trained in how to talk to an astronaut while they're in space. Can't say some certain things.
What couldn't you say?
Well, they're concerned about the mental health of astronauts while they're up, which makes sense. And well, you can't talk about like political stuff. They wouldn't want you to say if you knew some information about like a family member of theirs. Like basically they don't want you to say anything distressing because I mean, it makes sense. They're like
right. So they weren't like, don't say pizza because they really want pizza.
No.
That's definitely a remote experience. Wow. I've never met anyone that had the space station's number in their phone. So that's a check mark.
Could you text that to me?
It's just the operator of the space center, so it's not going to actually get you very far.
I definitely don't know her.
Can you text? Yeah, if you got, that'd be awesome if she texts us the number and we just started prank calling the space station every day. Like,
I would.
I would. Yeah, it's impressive.
Since we're talking about mental health, it's a perfect segue into what you're doing with your company. And I have so many questions, but really what I want to know is the phrase, as you describe it, is the burnout epidemic is what we're dealing with. And people are being forced, to make drastic career changes because of it. So, that being said, how did you migrate from architecture to holistic wellness? And how did you land where you are now?
That's a good question. So I was working for the architect Zaha Hadid. She was my professor at Yale and then hired me afterwards. For people who don't know who Zaha Hadid is, she passed away, but she was probably one of the most famous architects of our era, of our age. She does very parametric design, so it's all like
wavy,
like super space age looking, and it's really, really cool. Loved working there. But in college, grad school, and then also the early days of my architecture career, I was working extremely long hours. It's kind of, architects are famous for working insane hours and having to pull all-nighters all the time. And I think probably my body was just like, don't do that anymore. But I ended up getting a chronic inflammatory condition that kept on landing me in the hospital over and over again. And actually doctors were telling me that I might need to live on steroids for the rest of my life for it. Wow. And I just...
Was this because of stress?
It was basically because of stress, but it was also because my body is also prone to, I have like an inflammatory condition anyway. And so it was like the combination of the two things together. Yeah. But I mean, it was really, really hardcore. I would end up in the hospital like with internal bleeding for like 2 weeks at a time. Like it was like serious. Gosh. And so, so they were like, you could live on steroids. And I really I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to kind of give into this like having to rely on a drug like that. And of course, if it helps people, that's great. And if I ended up needing to do it, I would have done it. But they also told me in the hospital that I could try a more holistic approach. But then what happened was that they told me also that they had zero tools for me to try to figure it out. They were like, you're going to have to go and figure it out on your own, basically.
Not surprised.
So...
like,
exactly.
You could do the drugs for the rest of your life, and you could, do steroids or whatever for the rest of your life, or you could try something holistic. We've heard that works, but good luck.
But we can't help you. Yeah.
But it's easier to write you a prescription, and I'll get kickbacks from the pharmaceutical company if I do that.
Yeah, exactly. So I ended up needing to kind of just figure it out on my own, and this was more than 10 years ago. And I think, in the past 10 years, the wellness, well-being industry has just completely exploded, and there are a lot more tools and there's a lot more information, and there's like a well-being column in the New York Times. But back then it was barely even discussed. It was kind of like you'd have to find a practitioner or somebody to help you, like a nutritionist or something, or a health coach on your co-op bulletin board. That's like, it didn't really exist as a thing. So I ended up becoming a yoga instructor through this journey of like just figuring it out on my own, because I got really into yoga and meditation and mindfulness and that sort of thing. And
were you noticing an improvement though? Like as you got involved in that, were you like, I went to yoga, I'm feeling okay? Like I
think the thing that helped me and my particular condition the most was I went on a really extreme anti-inflammatory diet for 6 months. And it just kind of like fully reset things. And like, I don't live on that diet all the time, but it was really, really helpful. It almost felt like, because I've also taken the steroids, it almost felt the same as taking the steroids, like in terms of like how my body felt. It was super resetting and calming. And I've had some little flare-ups here and there in the last 10 years, but it's been way more under control than before. And I ended up not needing to be on the steroids. So for me, that was really, really helpful and continues to be really helpful. But I think that journey basically led me to discovering the holistic side of things. And there's so many aspects of it that are so helpful for so many people. So the yoga thing ended up just being kind of a byproduct of that, and then also the mindfulness side of things. And I ended up teaching mindfulness and around the world. I've taught yoga and mindfulness in Croatia and England and all sorts of places at festivals and different things. And I think in terms of remote work, I'm just now realizing like how much remote work I've done in my life even before the pandemic, because of all these projects that were so international. So another side project of mine back in the day was helping to work on a festival in Sweden. That was all remote work, but that was in 2010, so it was like way before normally people would have been doing a lot of remote work. But anyway, so I ended up starting a rooftop yoga class with a friend of mine just for fun. We started running classes at a big hotel in New York on like overlooking the city from this rooftop. And it really caught on really fast. We had these yoga on helicopter pads, and like famous people were showing up at the classes, and we started growing this community kind of accidentally. Like Ariana Huffington was at our class, and Misty Copeland, and like all these really cool people.
What?
And then that was about, I guess, 10 years ago. And again, kind of before yoga was everywhere, which is hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine a time when all of this wasn't around. But that kind of started to introduce me to the idea that, a lot of people that were coming to our sessions had really similar kind of healing journeys or health issues that they wanted to address more holistically, that they didn't know where to turn.
Where to go.
And so the kind of next step for that little company was to do the first wellness activations for companies like Samsung and Polaroid and Lululemon. We ended up doing
right off the bat, like so you're doing this on the rooftop, doing yoga on the rooftop of these buildings in New York. You're like, wow, this is getting kind of big. And you're like, the next step is, why don't we show this to businesses? Like, I was just trying to understand where you got the connection to like pitch it to business. I
can't even remember what happened. Maybe somebody came to one of our rooftops. This is a long time ago.
Yeah, sounds like it might have happened organically.
Yeah.
I think it happened pretty organically. And then we ended up doing the wellness lounges for Fashion Week with IMGWME. And that was because of a co-founder that we brought in named Jordan, who's amazing. And she is just, incredibly connected within the fashion world. And so that's where that came from. But yeah, there was just, what happened though is that, for the Fashion Week lounges, for example, we'd have people come in to our lounge, and there was a kind of a pop-up situation. So we had like a little like store that we had popped up with, honestly, a ton of brands that are now huge brands in well-being, but were just like baby brands then. It's like Sun Potion, Four Sigmatic, like all of these like little itty bitty brands that are now huge. And then we also had practitioners that would be giving little mini sessions. And what we kept on hearing over and over again was, I'm doing cancer treatment, and I would love to have an acupuncturist to be, complementing my cancer treatment, but I don't know where to find one. Or I've got some fertility issues and I would love to try talking to a health coach, and I don't know where to find one. And so it kept on being this thing, like I can't find one. So I ended up starting my company WellSet with my co-founder, Sky Meltzer. He was the CEO of Manduka, the yoga mat company, for about 10 years. And he had just had his second private equity exit with Manduka and had been looking into a concept for a marketplace. And he knew that I was kind of working in that space, trying to build a marketplace. So we were connected. And we launched WellSet as a marketplace in early days.
What year is this roughly?
In 2018.
Okay. So,
or 2019. I guess we fundraised in 2019.
So now you've done all this work up. You started the company, and this is pre-pandemic. And I'm assuming things are going okay. I'm assuming things are signing up all right. I'm just going to take a guess. Did you start the company remotely? Because I'm assuming is your co-founder in the same place that you were, or?
We did originally start remotely, and then when we got funding, I moved to LA. I was in San Francisco and he was in Los Angeles, and so I ended up moving to LA. But we ended up getting an office for a little while for just in 2019. But then of course the pandemic happened. Right. And actually the pandemic really changed how our business was built. And in those early days, we created the largest marketplace of holistic providers, I think, in the world. And most of them, about like 95% of them at that point, pre-pandemic, were all in-person sessions. And so that really, really, really drastically changed with the pandemic. And we were actually supposed to launch the platform in March of 2020, which we obviously we had to change our launch date.
Were the funders okay with that? You had no choice, but
the pandemic was everybody understood.
Yeah, I mean, it must have just been mind blowing just hearing you talk about like we're building this up, and then all of a sudden, we're getting ready to launch, everyone's excited, and then that happened, and you're like, oh no, wow.
Yeah, I know it was wild, and I think I'm definitely a person who, I think I see the writing on the wall. I don't double down on something that's not working, which is, I think, served our company really well because we've been able to pivot in little ways and find our direction instead of, I think some people are like, no, this is what we're doing. And then you can really drive something into the ground by not being flexible. But we've been really flexible with listening to the market and just kind of figuring it out. One of the things that happened was that in the early days of the pandemic, we realized, we have 20,000 well-being practitioners that we have vetted and background checked, and it's kind of almost made us the biggest talent agency for these types of well-being practitioners. And with my events background and our company's events background, we realized that we could offer something really great for people when they were stuck at home, especially in those early days when everybody was really nervous. Nobody knew what was going on. It's hard to even remember at this point how scared everyone was. 4 years ago. Yeah, I know. It was really a scary time, and people had COVID and were stuck at home for a really long time with not seeing anyone and not knowing whether they were going to die. Literally, it was really scary. And so we ended up starting something that we called the Stay-at-Home Wellness Festival, which was about 6 weeks of 10 hours per day of live Zoom classes. And our practitioners were teaching. We had a whole range of different topics. We'd publish a new schedule every day. And we had 45,000 people come to that festival. And it was all organic. We weren't doing any ads. And people just loved it. And so that was kind of the first thing that we saw that was like, actually, maybe the in-person one-on-one thing is not actually the direction for the company. Maybe actually we can reduce the price point of everything by making it group classes and delivering it with a really, really inexpensive membership. And so what we have now is a platform, a digital studio that gives people access 24 hours a day to these classes that are in a group format. So there are up to 6 live classes per day, every day, with practitioners ranging from hypnotherapist through to EFT tapping. We have acupressure, we have myofascial release with posture classes, nonviolent communication classes with therapists. So it really, really ranges the whole gamut of all of the different types of holistic care, kind of mind, body, spirit, holistic care. And we've packaged it up for a really, really cheap price point for teams because the pandemic really, making everything more remote has created a lot of need for, even more of this kind of well-being stuff being delivered to people in their homes.
I would say so.
So it's almost like for a lot of people, the pandemic, including Rick and I, it was a really scary time, but the forced ability to kind of work remotely spurred a lot of innovation during that time. And it made us kind of rethink how we live and what priorities some people had. So it's just cool to hear from you. Like, you had this great idea to start off with, and then the pandemic happens, and because of how people were feeling, you all were like, hey, how can we help? And it's almost like your willingness to help. You could tell you come from a place of wanting to help just hearing your story, right? Like, you started charity in college. You started coding when you're 12 years old to help other kids learn how to code. Like, so you have this passion of giving, and it's just really great to hear that giving kind of helped you all kind of blossom too. Like, you know, I'm sure that wasn't the plan going in, and now look at you today. So I kudos to the world doing good, putting some more good back out there, you know?
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. And what I was just going to interject with is that we still have so much work to do. I feel like people had pandemic fatigue, you know, long before we declared that this pandemic was over. They just wanted to get back to normal. And, you know, moving beyond that, you know, over the past year, we've been seeing kind of a disconnect between managers, executives, whatever, and what employees want, you know, working remotely. Do you think that the kind of the friction between them is really a driving force behind people wanting just to feel better? Like, is it causing them a lot of friction in their own lives to know that I just want more flexibility? I got to start living better, but I also have to work. Like, can you talk a little bit at all about that relationship?
I mean, I think that at the end of the day, I think a lot of people talk about in the benefits space, like how they can really move the needle on things, like how HR teams and managers can move the needle on things like retention and presenteeism or absenteeism. A lot of times, if you ask the employees what they want, really all they want is to work less and be paid more. It really comes down to that.
Yes.
Yes.
But the problem is, like, it's almost like you have to talk to us. I'm including me. I'm an employee of my company too. And like, I'm like, yeah, it'd be great to be paid more and work less. I would love that. But it's almost like you have to talk to us all as like little kids. Cause like, you know, little kids also, like, they want the marshmallow, right? It's like you just want the marshmallow or you want the cookie, but you know that if you just eat cookies all day long, you're going to get sick. And like, you got to also eat some vegetables. And so I think that can't always be the answer, to just be paid more and work less. There have to be other things that we as the employees have to be like, you know what, actually, yes, I need to like take care of my well-being. And so that will make me feel better as well. I need to take care of myself and be given the tools to take care of myself. And that includes a bunch of different things, not just the stuff that we're working on providing. You know, it also includes, it includes a lot of things that are not really being addressed right now in our country very well. It includes childcare and elderly care. It includes, it's like, you know, all of the things that go into helping somebody to feel better in their work day that are not necessarily about like what you're doing when you're sitting down or the number of hours that you're working. And so I think that there is a little bit of a shift in mindset right now among managers and HR teams to see, you know, how they can support people in their wider lives. And I think like mental health and well-being and healthcare all happens outside of the office.
Yes.
For the most part. Like, you know, some things might happen in the office, but for the most part, it's outside of the office. So it's all about equipping employees to act or empowering employees, empowering teams to actually make better choices in their off time. Actually, you know, it's like, how do you spend your evenings? How do you spend your mornings? What are you choosing to put in your body? What are you choosing to do with your body outside of the work office? I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it's all relative. I think that one thing I've realized is that as tragic as the pandemic was, I mean, we lost a lot of people, and it's incredibly sad and tragic. But in my mind, something had to happen. I would rather have it not been as tragic as the pandemic was, but, you know, I feel like coming out of it now, we're all starting to realize how unhealthy we were. Not all of us, of course, but, something needed to change, and we were forced to change how we were living. And now it's like these thoughts are just, unfortunately, they're starting to catch up to us, to a lot of people, and they're just realizing now, wow, did I have it all wrong before? Look at all the things I used to take for granted.
Right. Like holistic well-being is a prime example of a space that really grew significantly, in my opinion, in the last 5 years because of people started reprioritizing. I want to move closer to my family. I don't mind seeing the cat go across the desk anymore or an interruption from a child because we started putting humans first because there was something so tragic that was going on. We started saying, well, dang, we're just humans, so let's kind of take care of ourselves first. So
totally.
And obviously, we're not here for very long.
Right. And the fact you made a really cool point about all of these things are new and how organizations are like an HR department, a lot of people ops people. And Tegan, I can't believe didn't hit up that area of Transform. All the people at Transform, a lot of times you hear people ops, people talking, and it's like HR got all this responsibility, and now we got to be concerned about some of the things outside of the office so that they're productive inside of the office. Mm-hmm. And I like the way you put it about providing resources for people to decide how they would like to spend their time outside of work. That's really cool.
Well, and I think the remote working side of things also is, I think we're never going to go back to everybody just, expecting that working in the office full time is normal. It's just my opinion, but I think there will always be at least a hybrid element to a lot of jobs, that is possible. Just because I think that there was such a shift in mental health and being able to take care of your elders and your kids because they're at your house probably. And that happened to my family during the pandemic. We were taking care of my grandparents, and it was a great thing that I was able to be at home and not in an office every day because of that. I think everybody now has seen that there could be a different way. Over the millennia, we've moved away from being really well, actually I should say Western world, because I think, there's still some communities around the world that still do things in a different way. But the Western world has moved away from supporting each other in a community way. And it's become all about the individuals and the nuclear family, but that has become really problematic. It's put a ton of pressure on people who are working out of the pre-pandemic out in the world, and then having to come back and figure out a way to get their kids have to be someplace else. Somebody else has to help them pick up their kids from someplace because they're across town working in an office. And now we've kind of seen oh, wait a second, actually, if I can work from home, or at least in a hybrid way, I can be there for my kids at pickup, and I can still be there for all the meetings I need to be at. I can take my aging parent to the doctor and shift my meetings around so it's possible. And I think that I'm talking a lot about care because I think that was one of the biggest things that shifted because of the pandemic.
A huge driver.
Yeah, huge driver. And on the mental health care side of things, I think that remote working really was hard for a lot of people mentally. Yeah. There's a lot of loneliness. There's a lot of feeling like the day's blending into the night, and you just there isn't a lot of boundary setting. And so I think a lot of people have had to figure out how they've had to teach themselves how to put boundaries in. And I think there's a lot of work to do on the loneliness side of things still, because I think a lot of people still do feel that way. And so, I think that's something we try to do. It's hard for us as a digital platform to really do that, but we just started this humans network for HR people, for people ops team members. So ranging from more junior members to CHROs, and we're bringing HR teams together in community because we've heard from them over and over and over again that their jobs are super lonely. They feel pressure from above and below, and they're the ones that are setting the tone for their whole team. So we, as people leaders, that it's their job to set the culture. And so we really believe in a trickle down system of if we can get the mental health and the loneliness problem solved at the HR level, then hopefully that can translate down into better mental health and better well-being for their teams as well.
Really, really interesting concept for sure. I like that.
Yeah, definitely. So, Tegan, can you tell us about a comical or inspiring moment you have had while working remotely?
Ooh, yeah.
Sure. So I think, I don't know, I think one of my favorite pandemic moments was I was working at home at my grandparents' house, actually. And they have since passed away, which is very sad. But I was so grateful because of being able to work remotely to get to spend a ton of time with them in those years. I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. I would have been in an office. And instead, I got to work from their house with them for weeks at a time, sometimes months at a time. And my favorite thing that happened was I was on a really important investor meeting. I had a bunch of people on the other line, like a boardroom of people like listening to me talk. And
it's serious. This is serious.
It was serious. And to my grandparents, I'm still their grandkid, who is like a baby to them. You know, I'm not like the CEO of a tech company. I'm like,
oh, little TT's over
yeah,
there.
exactly. Teagues. And so I'm sitting in the kitchen, and my grandpa, who would normally stay kind of like in the back of the house, I didn't really expect for him to come through, so I didn't warn him. But he like comes in with his walker and pauses like right behind me in the view. And he's the cutest, and I love him so much. But he's like hard of hearing and also blind, and so he doesn't know what's going on, and he's just like yelling at me.
What's he yelling at you for?
No, I don't even know what he was saying, but he was saying something about the puppies. I think that's what it was. He comes in, he had these two little dogs, and he'd be like, he walked in and he was like, puppies! And then he started yelling, and I'm like, I don't know, because he can't even hear me, and so I'm like, Grandpa! Speaking of muting yourself, Rick.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Oh my gosh! So what happened? So like everyone on the call,
it was fine. It was but I mean, it was endearing. It's fine. It wasn't a problem. But can you imagine that happening before we were all working remotely? That your grandpa would be the view behind you while you're in a really important pitch, yelling about puppies. Yeah.
Out of curiosity, did you land the pitch?
I can't even remember. Probably not.
No, well, you know what? They lost.
only say that.
Hey, wait, just to be sure, just in case you did get the funding from the company, just in case, great job. If you didn't, you lost.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't know if you can hear, my puppy is now barking. And so I'm going to get the full working remotely experience. I can't remember what pitch it was, but I only say probably not because I pitch, you just don't, the probability is, it's like 10% hit rate. So it's like probably one of the 90%.
There it is. I mean, Grandpa probably saved you from some ridiculous terms. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
So, thanks, Gramps. He's looking out for you every time. He still is.
Yeah, exactly. Still is.
That's such a great story, Tegan. Thank you so much, especially for your insights, but sharing your experiences with us and
putting up with us.
Tolerating our juvenile behavior, as I say. You were a super sport, and we're so glad to have you here. Where can our listeners and viewers find you?
So WellSet is at wellset.co, so WELLSET.co. If they want to join Humans, if they're on a people ops team or if they're a people leader, that's free, completely free to join. That's at wellset.co/humans. If you contact us through any form on the website, I will see it probably. We're still that small of a team. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Well, the work you're doing is amazing. You are a ray of sunshine in a sometimes dark world. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We'll talk to you later. Peace.
You've been listening to Remotely One. Visit us at remotely1.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.